Tonight, reminisce is a perfect word for my speech tonight. I was thinking about what am I going to talk about? It has to be something with a lot of animation and excitement. And as I was pondering this, I decided that there was one event in my life in 1994 that made an impression on me physically and emotionally. Lee and I, my husband Lee, and I were on a business trip in Australia. And we decided to extend our trip another 7 days. And we had heard about this beautiful resort called Cayman Islands. And so we booked the resort, and we were 5 days into our trip. And throughout the resort, there's all kinds of literature on the Great Barrier Reef. And I began to realize that Lee and the resort had a collusion. They were conspiring against me. Lee was trying to convince me that I needed to go out into these foreign waters. How many of you have actually swam in foreign waters before?
I'm a foreigner.
Well, I'm not a foreigner, and I'd never, ever swam in foreign waters before, but I'd heard a lot of horror stories. So my mind began to play all kinds of scary thoughts about my survival. And Lee was really adamant about the experience of this beautiful, sea of fish and plant life and all of that, and he began to use a sales spiel, which he does so well on me. And he told me how we couldn't leave Sydney without experiencing this. So I agreed to do this. And as we're on this little chartered flight with 3 other people, one happened to be a man with his 2 children, a daughter and a son, I was rethinking my choice of going out there into this sea of water. Well, the pilot that was actually flying the plane was also our tour guide. And he was, I thought, qualified. I was hoping anyway. And so by the time we got to this little point, it was about 20 minutes, we got to this point in the sea, and there was an all-glass boat, and he said, okay, we're here. And I thought, well, are we going to jump off the plane, or are we going to get on this boat? So he led us onto this glass boat and handed me the snorkel gear. And I've never, ever used snorkel gear in my entire life. So I started panicking, thinking, how am I going to float in this ocean of water? And then he handed me the little floaties. And he said, this is how you're going to keep yourself afloat. So I put my gear on, and I went out with Lee and these other 3 people, and I'm swimming around, and I'm hyperventilating, and I'm scared to death. And I'm looking at the fish, trying to pretend that this is great. And I finally, after a few minutes, about 15 minutes, decided, okay, I've had enough of this. I was panicking because I'm out there, and I'm thinking, what if I can't float anymore? So I told the pilot, I think I've had enough. And he looked at me and said, well, what's the problem? And I said, well, it's so deep. And he said, oh, well, there's other areas here that you can go to, we can take you to, and it's shallow. Well, when I think of shallow, I think of standing in a body of water and being able to stand up and look down. And I thought, okay, I can do that. Okay, I'm okay now. So we got back in the boat, and we went to this other destination. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, we're still out here in the sea, and I can't see the bottom of the ocean. So I can't imagine how this is going to work out. So I got my gear on, and I'm looking at Lee, and I said, do I really have to do this? He goes, oh, Paula, we've got to get some more video of you. Now, imagine this. I'm in a little tiny bikini. I was much younger then. And I'm thinking, okay. So I get into the water, and these other 2 children decided they wanted to go along with me. And so I thought, that's okay. And Lee swam out a little bit further, and he's got his video camera on me, and I'm swimming toward him. I felt like a mermaid at that point. And so all of a sudden, as I'm swimming, I got this electrical wave throughout my body. I had no idea what it was, but I just know that I thought, if you ever stick your finger in a socket, this must be what it feels like. Whoa. And I started screaming bloody murder. And Lee's giving me this odd look like, what is your problem? And you know in Jaws, how the girl is almost walking on water because this, you know, shark is after her?
Yeah.
That's what I must have looked like, because I was definitely on top of water, walking on water. And I'm screaming, help me, help me. And he's looking at me like, what do you want me to do? And I've got these tentacles, little angel hair plastic tentacles, wrapped on my body and on my butt and my legs. And I'm like floundering about like this. And so finally, Lee came running, you know, swimming over to me, and he takes a hold of me and they kind of helped me onto the boat. And he went after the children to make sure that they didn't get it, because he didn't know what it was and I didn't either. So as I got up on the boat, the pilot proceeds to pull these little tentacles off me, because it had actually separated from the body of the jellyfish. It was a jellyfish, a box jellyfish. And I didn't see it when I was swimming because it's underneath water and it's clear, so you don't see anything like that. So I literally swam into this thing. And before I got out there, I asked the pilot, shouldn't I have a wetsuit? And he said, oh no. He said, this is winter. You won't incur any kind of danger out here. Well, sure enough, I did. So we got on the plane immediately and flew me, and they were trying to decide whether to fly me to Sydney or to go to the Hayman Island resort. Well, they took me to the resort. We get in, I'm in my little bikini lying there shaking like this. And the doctor's asking me questions, and I'm just thinking, just give me medicine. That's all I want, something to get rid of this pain. And so the doctor looked at Lee and he said, she's a really strong woman because this man 2 months ago died. And Lee goes, she's a horse. Well, anyway, that didn't go over real well. And so I just sat there and said, could I have some medication, please? And he gave it to me. Well, later on that evening, you know, I was better, much better. We went out to run. That's how he was really concerned about me. And so the next day we got on the plane, and all I could think about was, thank you, dear Lord, for sending me home to my son, because I thought I was a goner. So in conclusion, I would have to say that for any of you that are thinking about going out into foreign waters, number one, get floaties. Number two, get some kind of a wetsuit. And number three, pray that you have your own transportation to get out of that boat once you start to get into the water.